Hey guys, welcome back to Pop Culture Down Under. Thanks for joining me for another Omnibus overview. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Animal Man New 52 Omnibus, written by Jeff Lemire, also with art by Travel Foreman and Steve Pugh, among others. As you can see on the dust jacket, I hope the camera picks it up, you can see that the background of the dust jacket is a matte finish, and we also have the text and the cover done in gloss. And when you see this in person, it's an effect that works really well. It's quite striking. And we can see a lot of uses of orange and red throughout this book because of Animal Man's connection to the red, which is sort of a force like the green that Swamp Thing is a part of. So when we have a look on the spine here of the dust jacket, we can see the title and the author's name with the current DC logo at the bottom. And then we turn it over onto the back, and we can see, again, we've got another image of Buddy, we've got an overview of the series, and we can also see the $99.99 US cover price down here. In Australia, you'd be looking at picking this up for around $130, $135 if you use Amazon or one of the other online retailers like Mighty Ape, if you're lucky. In fact, it can even have reached up to the $150 mark by now. I got this a couple of months ago from my local comic store before the coronavirus got the prices put up, so I got a pretty good deal on this one. I hadn't ever read this before, so it was kind of a blind buy for me, but it was definitely worth reading, and I really enjoyed the series overall. So let's have a look underneath the dust jacket. We can see that red theme continuing on the printed cover boards, and we can see we've got an image of Buddy here, and the cover continues right around the outside of the book. We can see it, the same image wraps right around. Wasn't particularly good what I did with the cover just then. Alright, so opening it up, we can see inside the cover page here has a lot of the same red and black elements that we saw on the outside cover board here. It's continued inside. And then we see some more reds and blacks tying into the red, once again being the Animal Man, the source of his powers. And here we go. So we can see a lot of the creators that worked on this series. Jeff Lemire does the writing. Scott Snyder contributed a couple of issues in the crossover, the Rotwell crossover with Swamp Thing. And then the first arc was done by Travel Foreman on art, and then he continued to do a little bit more as well, bits and pieces later on. The majority of the art would be by Steve Pugh, and then we also get a few other artists here and there like Raphael Albuquerque, who worked on the American Vampire stuff with Scott Snyder. An omnibus I really wish I hadn't missed out on. Alright, so let's keep going. We can see we've got our contents page, which is great, giving us the idea of the issue titles and the numbers. We've got an introduction by Jeff Lemire himself, written in 2019, and it serves as a really good reflection of his back on the series that he wrote, as well as it gives some insight into how he felt following Grant Morrison on Animal Man as well. So we jump right in. We've got the covers. They don't have all of the trade dress that they would have had when they were released in single issues, but we get our covers, and we also get them in black and white as well. And then we jump into the issues. So we can see the first 6 issues or so are Travel Foreman on art, and his style is pretty different to what I was used to when I started reading this in 2011. I read a few issues online back then. But, you know, nowadays I'm used to it. I like a more diverse range of artists than I did originally. I used to really only follow the DC house artist style, like Jason Fabok and Jim Lee and Ivan Reyes and Gary Frank, people like that. But as I've read a lot more comics over the last 5 or so years, I've really come to enjoy a variety of styles. Now, we can see in this series a lot of the different types of adversaries and monsters that they come in contact with have a real The Thing vibe about them, where they're kind of like a grotesque mixture of different types of animals and things that live in the real world, but morphed and put together in a sort of really horror show type way. that it's quite interesting to look at. And as a horror fan, I find I really enjoy looking at these kinds of designs. But yeah, be warned, there are some fairly grotesque monsters in here, especially the servants of the rot, which we will see throughout the series. Now, another important thing to note about Animal Man is that he is a family man. So his family are really just as important to the book as Buddy Baker is himself. So we can see his wife, and he's got his 2 kids, all of which feature heavily throughout the story, particularly his daughter Maxine. I won't spoil it, but she is very important throughout the story as we continue to go through. The art we're looking at here is by Steve Pugh, who he did some of the art for Animal Man in previous series back in the Vertigo days. So it was good to see him return, and I think that his art is probably my favorite in this book because it more fits that DC house style. Now, this book has got relatively tight DC style binding. It doesn't want to sit flat until we get really quite a long way into the book, about still not sitting flat. And I'd say we're about 300 pages in before it sits flat. But it's not bad overall. It's a mixture of glued and sewn, so you don't really have to worry about the binding coming apart, which is good. But it does want to close until you get quite close to the middle. So we do get crossover with Swamp Thing, and we can see Swamp Thing and Abigail here. Throughout the New 52, Scott Snyder and Jeff Lemire work quite closely while they were working on both series, and the crossover that we get between them about halfway through this book is a really great story. And I'm really looking forward to getting the Swamp Thing New 52 Omnibus next year that not only collects the Scott Snyder run, but also the Charles Soule run that came afterwards as well. It'll be the first time for me to read all of that, but most of it, from what I have heard, is really great. So it will be a really good complement to this book. And between the two, you should get the entire Rot World crossover. And Rot World is fantastic. I mean, things like this just show what a great event it is. All right. As we keep going through, the artists do swap back and forth a little bit. After Rot World, the series does take a little bit of a dip in quality. It's not quite as good after that, but I would never say that it was bad. I enjoyed the read the whole way through the book. And even just for the artwork from Steve Pugh, it's really good. Raphael Albuquerque does a few issues towards the end, which also, his art style is really good. We can see some of it here. If you've read American Vampire, or you've read the Batman story he did with Scott Snyder before the New 52, Black Mirror, you would recognize his style. So overall, it looks really good. Actually, I don't think he did that Batman story. I think that was Jock. So sorry, I made a mistake there. Anyway, I won't show you the ending. There's quite a lot of back matter throughout the book. Okay, we get a profile of Animal Man himself. We get these awesome connected covers that were joint efforts by Steve Pugh and Yannick Paquette, who were the 2 cover artists on most of the issues of Animal Man and Swamp Thing, respectively. And then we get some sketchbooks, quite a lot of sketches actually from the various artists that worked on it. And it's interesting to see the pencils here. We see character designs, panels, things like that. Quite a lot of back matter in here. I think it must have been going to be a little bit too small if they didn't include this stuff. Some good designs here, some good Green Lantern stuff. Steve Pugh's sketches are really good. His pencils are fantastic. And yes, we get some inks as well towards the back. Different artists' work. And as we get to the end, there's really just a lot of sketches and inks right the way to the end. And then we get our creator bios at the back here. And that's it. Before we go, I will just quickly take a look at the folds inside of the dust jacket. So inside the dust jacket, we can see we get on the left-hand side, we get the Animal Man catchphrase, "Evolve or Die," which is featured on t-shirts that some people wear throughout the run that he has got out there in the community. And we also get a bio by Jeff Lemire as well. So overall, what would I rate this omnibus? I would say the story and the art, the whole combined package, I would have given it about a 7.5 out of 10. A good story, good artwork, not as good as the Grant Morrison run, but I mean, that is a total classic. Difficult to compete with that. And this is a lot different to that as well. The Grant Morrison run is very psychedelic and it was really groundbreaking for its time. Whereas this is more of a traditional, straightforward story with a lot of horror elements. It's very enjoyable in its own right, but not really fair to compare it with Grant's fantastic run. Alright guys, so thank you for joining me for another Omnibus overview. Please like, subscribe for more of this content and for some different content coming in the future as well. Thank you once again for watching and see you next time. Bye.